Okay, on behalf of Let's Stop and the Agudah Broadcasting Commission, I'd like to welcome you all to METZULOS HADAF, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Tommy, remember the book? Went through the moon, Under the Sea. But the idea is that once a month we're going to have a shiur and delve a little deeper into the sugyas that we cover in Daf Yomi. It's a pleasure that Daniel is going to be the first one. I'm going to ask everybody to monitor their own mute button, please. If you enter the room, all new people will be muted. But for yourself, there'll be time for questions afterwards. And by the way, I know you're all on Zoom and you're comfortable in your own home. Daniel, I like to call the one part spinning.
Just make sure you have enough schnapps.
For me, the shiur is never going to be amazing. I started, I think it's worthy of the celebration as well. Sponsored by Jack and Judy Dance, and Mishma's Rock, by Yitzroel, and his daughter. And the upsharing of Shmuel Finkel in Manchester, New Jersey. Right. Okay, here we go. Daniel, take it away, please.
Okay, everybody say we're going to begin. Please make sure you have more than one.
On the Zoom.
I'm sorry?
Not on the Zoom. I don't know. It's not going there.
Is my picture on?
Yes,
Okay.
You got it.
Okay. Our dear friend Rebbe Kiva, that we know is Rosh Rishon, Lahagdil Torah Ladira, and he gave me the opportunity to share with the Olam, hopefully something that will enhance the Havana of the most difficult blot in Rosh Hashanah, Daf Chof Amid Beis. The Gemara says, Omar Shmuel, Yochilino liskune lekule goylo. Shmuel says, I could fix the entire goyla, the entire Jewish population in the diaspora that don't know when Rosh Chodesh was. I could tell them when Rosh Chodesh is. In short, he knew the calculations. And the Ritva says that in the place, if people were noyeg al pi the MOILAD, perhaps they would have been able to do so, and they could have kept the Rosh Chodesh and the Yomim Tovim according to their own calculations. Shmuel didn't divulge the secret, but Shmuel says, I knew it. The Gemara calls Kiddush HaChodesh Soid HaIbor, and the Achronim explain why is it Soid HaIbor, why was it kept secret? It was given to Moshe Sinai, but it was kept amongst the highest Bezdin in Klal Yisroel. And for the simple reason that we see that Kiddush HaChodesh is so intrinsic to the Achdus of Klal Yisroel, Mekadosh Yisroel v'Hazmanim, that we all keep one calendar. And if people would have known the Cheshbonos on their own, perhaps they would have said, we declare this day Rosh Chodesh. Or if the Chachomim, for their own reasons, not for themselves, but for the benefit of Klal Yisrael, Yizal's Kavod Hames, or for the reasons of the food spoilage, that they were allowed to maneuver a day before and a day after, if people would have known the calculations, people would have come to argue and be miranein on the Bezdin and say, that's not Rosh Chodesh. The MOILAD is a different time. And we see in our history, the Baisusim tried to sabotage it. The Yevonim tried not to allow Kiddush HaChodesh. So Kiddush HaChodesh goes back a very, very long time. And until the 4th century, Klal Yisrael was Mekadesh al Piriya. Edom came because there was a central Bezdin, and they were Mekadesh with witnesses, and they had to find shluchim to go tell the people who lived in Iran and Iraq and Turkey, and all the Yidden that lived around. Sometimes they lit fires. The fires were sabotaged. They sent shluchim. The shluchim was sabotaged. Until it came to a point that there was no breira, and Hillel HaKotan in the 4th century created the calendar that we have today, 1,700 years ago. Right. So 99, that's a good question, Tommy. 99% of the Yidden, especially after. That's why. That's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why that they made the calendar. It's fixed for everyone. No, it did. Tom, when Klal Yisrael lived all within ERETZ Yisrael, that's why because Baruch Hu said you can be Mekadosh al pi MOILAD as well. So when it stops working for exactly the reasons you're articulating, when it stops working, then we have the Kiddush al pi the MOILAD, and that's what we have today, the Kiddush al pi MOILAD. But when it does work, it's mitzvah l'kadosh al pi riyah. And if there's a way through texting or there's a way to notify everything through different means, that's what we would do, because it's a mitzvah l'kadosh al pi riyah. And the riyah doesn't always stem with the MOILAD, as we're going to see. There are two different ways that we can make Kiddush HaChodesh. And again, the last 1700 years, we do it al pi the MOILAD. And that's with the minute.
The MOILAD is exactly.
I'm going to get to the MOILAD, David. I'm going to get there right now. That's why we have all these props.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
That's where the minute comes from in most shuls in Klal Yisrael to announce the MOILAD when we bench Shabbos Mevorchim, because that's our Kiddush. It's based on the MOILAD. David's asking an excellent question. I tried to avoid it and run out of time before, but I guess I didn't. How do we explain the MOILAD and what is the MOILAD? The MOILAD in English, the term is used conjunction. And what conjunction means is when the sun, the moon, and the earth are perfectly aligned. I keep it, these two I think will be better. Yeah, but the next one also.
The next one too.
Yeah. So when they're perfectly aligned, that's conjunction. Now, this is a globe. This is the world. We know that the world revolves around the sun, moving 1 degree a day, which after a year, it's going to move around the sun 365 degrees, a complete circle, and that's a solar year. I'm sorry? 360 degrees. Yeah, that's a solar year, almost a degree a day, but it exactly takes a year for the Earth to go around the sun. That's the way the heliocentric theory, and the Earth goes around the sun. The moon goes along with it around the sun. This is the moon, and it goes around the sun. So, I'm sorry, around the Earth. Thank you, Maya. Okay, thank you for listening. It goes around the Earth. So I'm going to attempt, if we take this, Maya, if you give me a hand, hold the globe. You have the globe? And if we were to go, so the moon, which is this hula hoop, thanks to my daughter, goes around the sun, which is over there, and it keeps on going. While that happens, the moon has its own orbit around the Earth. The moon's orbit around the Earth, while the Earth is revolving around the sun, takes 29 and a half days. 29 days and 12 hours for that complete revolution.
Actual circle, or it's in a...
No, it's not a circle. Very good. It's not a circle, and it's not in the middle. It changes with the seasons, how the Earth goes around the sun, the way the moon revolves around the Earth. But the pattern is 29 and a half days and about 40 minutes. Now, I'm going to show, I'm going to say with the ball here, and we can understand. This ball, by the way, is from Mickey Mantle's home run. No.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, it's correct, Maya. Thank you. This ball, which is the moon, will travel around our Earth, around the Earth, as the Earth rotates around the sun. That is a Jewish month. The full circle, as it encircles the Earth and makes a complete revolution around the Earth, that's a month. And the starting point of the month is when the moon is between the sun and the earth. And don't forget, as the earth moves, it's going to change locations every 29 and a half days where that's going to happen, but it's going to happen somewhere because the moon, after the complete revolution around the earth, is going to end up where it started, keneged the sun. That is conjunction. Conjunction is the MOILAD, when the moon is perfectly aligned between the sun and the earth. And therefore, at the time of the MOILAD, you could never see the moon. The moon does not generate its own light. And if earth is here and the moon is here, and that's the sun will shine on the half of the moon that's not facing the earth. So it's impossible to see the moon at the point of conjunction. The back of the moon. So if you were on the other side of the moon, you would see it, but the earth is here. So
Wouldn't they see the rays around it?
it's night. No, you see nothing, right? You see nothing. So it's night, you see nothing, and therefore you don't have any, because since the moon doesn't have its own light, you end up seeing nothing. Nowhere in the world can anyone see the moon in the point of conjunction. And in fact, we're going to see in a few moments, if you Google how much after conjunction can you see the moon, believe it or not, the first thing that comes up in Google is Shitas Rashi. That 6 hours after conjunction, you could see the moon. And we'll explain that in a moment. The first thing that came up was Shitas Rashi. And it's difficult after 6 hours. Scientists say 13 hours. They see it different parts of the world. But the conjunction and the MOILAD can happen anywhere at any time. Now, how could we, same position, Peter? If this is like this, Nisan will be here. Adar, it's going to be here because the sun, every Rosh Chodesh, one time conjunction could be in Hong Kong, one time it could be in Toronto, it doesn't matter. When we call out the MOILAD, we call out Eretz Yisrael time, meaning if let's say conjunction happens in New York at 7 o'clock in the morning, what they're going to announce in the shul is that the MOILAD is 1 a.m. because that's what it is in Eretz Yisrael. Because 7 here is 1 a.m. there. And that's what they're going to announce. For example, this Thursday night, the MOILAD is 12:55 in Eretz Yisrael. So that's the point of conjunction. Again, we don't know where that conjunction is taking place, but wherever the moon is aligning, anywhere, somewhere on the world, that's happening. Wherever it's happening, the time in Eretz Yisrael at that moment is 12:55, and the time in Toronto would be 6:55 p.m. Thursday night. So if you want to know when is the MOILAD this Thursday night, it's 6:55 p.m. right after Shkia, less than an hour after Shkia, right in the beginning of Rosh Chodesh. That is the MOILAD.
Doesn't conjunction happen anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world.
So it's not just like one conjunction. We only go with the conjunction of Eretz Yisrael.
No. Right. It's the same conjunction everywhere in the world, but we adjust the time. In Toronto, conjunction happened at 6:55. In Eretz Yisrael, it's 12:55. In Hong Kong, it's 4:55 in the morning. There's one conjunction, but where are you in the world? We're going to adapt the time to that second. But it's the same second all over the world. Is the MOILAD.
How do we know when that conjunction is going to be?
Could be during the day.
That's why you won't see the moon yet.
You have no idea. Right, David, you have no idea when conjunction is going to be, but we could figure it out because we know how long it takes for the moon to revolve around the earth. We know it was given to Moshe Sinai the exact timing, which is today confirmed. Today they could see it. So the exact timing is 29 days, 12 hours, and 40 minutes, and some chalakim. That's a pasuk. That's a pasuk. That's the month. Rosh Chodeshim is moon. That's Rashi said. Rosh Chodeshim Kadesh is moon, The halacha Moshe Sinai is telling me to figure out the cheshbonis we're given. So again, Rabbi Isai, there is one conjunction somewhere in the world. It could happen during the day. It could happen during the night. It doesn't matter. It's when the moon finishes its revolution around the earth and it realigns itself with the sun, wherever that is. We will adjust our times based on that. In fact, we know you can't make Kiddush Levana after the 15th day. Which MOILAD do we go? The MOILAD in Toronto is 6:55 p.m. this Thursday night. So you have 15 days to 6:55. Or do you go by the MOILAD of ERETZ Yisroel, which l'chayra, you should go by the MOILAD of Toronto because that's the time of the real MOILAD. That's a shayla in the place, Kim. But the fact is there is one MOILAD for the entire world, and that is called conjunction. And that the Chazal knew. And what Shmuel meant, Yechailoni, I'm able to be misaking the Goyla, is if I teach the people in Iran the MOILAD, they will figure out which day Rosh Chodesh is. Because they will know if the MOILAD is Thursday night and Thursday, Friday is Rosh Chodesh. It's a mitzvah Kaddish al pi edim. Shmuel didn't divulge that secret because they were still Mekadesh al pi edim. But Shmuel said, I know it. I know the secret. Hillel HaKotner in the 4th century said, no longer could we be Mekadesh with edim. Number one, there was no central bezdin that everyone would listen to. And he saw with his wisdom that Toronto is going to keep one Yom Tov, New York another Yom Tov, everyone will keep their own convenience. So the default is to be Mekadesh al Yidei, the MOILAD, which is conjunction, and he set the calendar forth exactly when the MOILAD is. Until Mashiach comes, we know exactly when it is, and that MOILAD is how we're Mekadesh the Chodesh, and that's where the minute comes from, in shul to call out the MOILAD. So that's the MOILAD every month, and that's a proper way. Mitzvah Mekadesh with Edim, but it's a proper way to be Mekadesh. No, it's not 6 hours time. The point is 1 minute, 1 second. 6 hours, we can't see it, and I'll explain that in a moment. The point of conjunction is for 1 second, because it's moving so fast. There's that 1 second, one chelik that they're exactly aligned. After that, it moves over. It's documentary. You could Google it. How much is it between? They'll tell you exactly how many chalokim, how much of a second it is that the moon aligns. This is what? Yeah. This is straight from. Yeah, but we Chazal, Hill knew it. Rabbi Feldman in Sefer writes, the Chachomim knew it well over 1,000 years before science had a clue. And he writes, it's halacha mashmisina. He doesn't know any other explanation how the Tanoim, how they could have said that either Soid Hashem Lireyav or halacha mashmisina. Okay.
What did the Adam see? They said so. They're seeing it already.
They're seeing it a day after the MOILAD. Very good. The Adam could be seeing it a day after the MOILAD, 8 hours after the MOILAD. They could be seeing it, and that. But still, it's a mitzvah to Kaddish with Adam, even if you're off the MOILAD by a day. Even if you're off the MOILAD by a day, you're allowed to. Right. Yeah, he doesn't know. Yeah. No, article also says half mashmisina. I said, yeah. No, yeah. He just says it's inconceivable to him. How's it possible that recorded in the Gemara the exact second? Okay.
They're off even by a day. That means it's $11, or it could still be $11. But it's
Yeah, the MOILAD could come out because it's 29 and a half, and we're going to get to that. Right. So now Rabbi say 29 and a half times 12 is 354 days. That's our lunar calendar. 354 days. The pasuk says in Baruch Nafshi, Osi Yerech L'Moyadim Shemesh Yoda Mevoyoy. Shemesh Yoda Mevoyoy. Rabbi say, if you want to look at a calendar, what time was Netzach Chama on November 2nd? You don't have to use a calendar from 2021. You could use a calendar from 1891, from 1742. Shemesh Yoda Mevoyoy. The solar year never changes. It has a path. Yoda Mevoyoy, Chok Nosan V'lo Yavor. It is the same year after year. Netz, Shkia, it's identical. The lunar calendar is not like that. Every year it changes. 1 year Pesach falls out in March, 1 year in April, 1 year. It changes. It's made for the Moyadim. It's a floating calendar. It adjusts. The Moilad itself, the path of the moon is not like the path of the earth, like we'll see in the Mishnah. Sometimes the gravitational pull makes it a drop earlier than Moilad, sometimes a drop later. It doesn't have a set path how it is. In fact, the Mishnah later is going to say, we're going to learn in Rosh Hashanah, Reb Gamliel said the Edom are good, and the other Reb Doisha said the Edom are no good. And the Rav Mishnah says Reb Gamliel knew that the gravitational pull at that time and the Moilad could be up to, I think, 2 hours earlier or 2 hours later. It's possible. It always balances out to 354. But at that month, the gravitational pull could pull the moon quicker depending on where it is between the earth and the sun. Okay, Rabbi Isai said that's the Moilad. Now just allow me this, Rabbi Isai. I saw this on a display and it gave me a lot of clarity, and I'd like to share it with the Olam. This is Toronto. We spoke about the world going around the sun. We spoke about the moon revolving around the earth. But the world rotates very quickly. Every single day, it makes a complete rotation. This is Toronto here on the globe. This is the sun. The sun, for our purposes, is stationary. It's really not stationary, but for our purposes on the world, it is. The galaxy moves, whatever that means, but for us, it's stationary. As the world spins very fast, this would be 6 o'clock in the morning, right? When this guy in Toronto is back here, it's still dark because the sun only shows on half the globe at one time, day and night. Vayi erev, vayi boker. When Hashem created the sun and the moon, so half of the globe is light and half is dark, because just like we said about the moon before, this is 6 o'clock in the morning. As the world spins, it looks to us like the sun is moving. Because, like I said before, you could spin around this room or you could spin around yourself. It's going to have the same impact. The earth is spinning, and then he starts seeing the sun in the east. More and more, it's like in the middle of the sky. Here, it's chatzois. He looks, it's straight there. As the sun starts setting, the sun moves west, because from his perspective, the sun is moving west as he is spinning from west to east. It comes here, it's 6 o'clock, it's going to be shiur. Here, it's 7 o'clock in Toronto, 8 o'clock. No longer do the rays of the sun have an effect, right? So the sun shines on half the globe at one time. On a perfect day, 6 hours and 6 hours where it's aligned, this would be Natzachama, this would be Chatzois, this would be Shiur. And that's how we have Vayi Erev, Vayi Boker. Now, 3 questions that I would like to address, which hopefully will clarify the English. And that is, why do we always see the new moon right after Shiur? For example, this Friday night, if you walk out from shul, maybe you'll see the moon, and by the time you get home from shul, the moon will be gone. Where the reverse is true today. You wake up 7 o'clock to daven, probably earlier, you look, you'll see the moon at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30. You look now, you won't see a moon. In the beginning of the Chodesh, you see a moon in the beginning of the night, always. At the end of the month, you see a moon at the end of the night. That's a fact. Why is that? Shlomo Miller once got a Chanukah card, lighting the first night of Chanukah. Someone sent him a card with a picture of him lighting it with a big, beautiful moon in the background. He ran around the Koil Azam Aratzis. There's no moon on Chof Hei Kislev. There's no moon on Chof Hei. This guy's lighting 5 o'clock in the morning. There's no moon on Chof Hei Kislev. Why is that? Why is there only a moon in the beginning of the month, in the beginning of the night? In the middle of the month, the moon is there the entire night. And at the end of the month, we only see the moon 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. Yesterday morning, there was a beautiful moon at 6:30. All over the world. There's no exceptions to this.
Globally, whether it's winter or summer.
All over the world. This is all over, and I'm going to explain why. Conjunction the MOILAD means that the moon is in between the sun and the earth. At that point, you can't see anything. No matter where you are on this globe, no matter where you are, you're not going to see anything. If conjunction happens by day, you surely won't see anything because the rays of the sun are here. If it happens by night, so then you're over here and the sun is here. No matter what, you will never see wherever you are at the time that it's perfectly aligned because the sun shines on half the moon, just like it shines only on half the earth. And the part that's facing us is the dark side. So you'll never see that. The moon moves 12 degrees a day. Am I right, Maya? 12 times 30 is 360. 12 degrees a day from west to east around the globe to encircle the earth. Every day, the moon, as the earth is revolving around the sun, the moon is revolving around the earth, but it has its own orbit. And that orbit moves 12 degrees. So the moon moves from conjunction east, first day 12 degrees, second day 24 degrees, 36. It gets here, it's 90 degrees. It gets here, it moves 180 degrees. It gets here, it moves 270 degrees, wherever it is, and it gets back here, wherever position it's in, that is going to take the complete chodesh of 29 and a half days. The moon spinning?
The moon doesn't spin.
Right,
that's
it
why you have
doesn't.
the dark side. That's why you have the dark
It's
side.
not, it's a round ball. It's a round ball.
Otherwise, you would have the dark. That's why you have the dark side.
No. It only gets light from the sun. So, right, I'm not sure about the spinning part. I'm not sure, but it's not Negea because it doesn't have its own light, Akiva. So Rabbi say, now I'm going to, Rabbi say, if you allow me to explain this, I think it'll be very helpful. So let's say this is Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which is going to happen this Friday. The moon is in between the sun and the earth. No one could see it. The only way we could see it is after conjunction. 6 hours, it moved 3 degrees. 12 hours, it moved 6 degrees. Now, when the moon is here, by day, of course, you can't see it because it's still so powerful, the light of the sun. But now a small sliver will form if it's dark enough that you could see, because it's not directly between the sun and the earth. It moved till here, and the sun shining on it, because the sun is a ball, it shines all over, will illuminate 50% of the moon. So what could be reflected on earth is a very, very, very small sliver. But that sliver you can't see by day. Now, if we have Shkia in Toronto, no, it's not a reflection. No, I mean, it illuminates off the moon, reflects the moon. Right, the moon has no light of its own. So the sun rays will hit here and make this small sliver. Remember, because the sun is shining here, most of it is not facing the world. But now, since it's moved over, you do have a small sliver here that you will be able to see from the world. But when will you be able to see that? You'll only be able to see that by Shkia when it gets dark. Now, if the moon moved 3-4 degrees, Shkia will be 15 minutes of Shkia of the sun before the moon. Because let's say conjunction was 5 to 12 in the afternoon. That's the example the Gemara gives, 5 to 12. 5 to 6 at night, right? 5 to 6 at night, it's 5 minutes before Shkia on March 21st or September 21st on a perfect day. So it's 5 minutes before Shkia, it's getting very dark. The moon moved further east. The moon won't set until 6:20. Why is that? You're here. The sun is there. You lose the sun, but yet you could still see the moon because the moon is further east than the sun. You lost the sun because the sun stayed stationary. The moon is moving in this direction. So if it's moving, it's still in your line of vision for a few moments with reflection from the sun that's hitting it, and it's dark enough for you to see a small sliver. How many degrees does it have to move after conjunction? Rashi says 3 degrees. 6 hours later, right by Shkia. But Rabbi say, you understand why it has to be right by Shkia, the beginning of the month? Because conjunction happened and the moon is next to the sun. Wherever it is in the world, it's right next to the sun. So whenever you have Shkia for the sun, the moon will only be up for 15 minutes. The first day of the month, it's right next to the sun and you're spinning. You're losing your visibility for the sun and the moon. The sun is so close to the moon. So if 6 o'clock, your sun goes down, 6:15 or 6:30, the moon's going to go down because the moon is right here. The next night, the moon will be up till 7 o'clock. The next night, it'll be up 2 hours. It moves 12 degrees a day. So when the moon is here, 6 o'clock is Shkia. But the moon now is here. So you're going to be able to see the moon until 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. So again, Rabbi say, every single day, the moon is out longer and longer because for the simple reason, as it moves away from the sun, what does it mean when the sun sets? The sun doesn't set. You lost your visibility because you're moving to the other side of the globe. So you can't see the sun in the western side as you're looking that way. You lost it. It went down as you spin. But the moon is moving east. So the moon has a few minutes after the sun. Every single Rosh Chodesh. That's true. Yes, much closer. 240,000. Yeah, much closer. But Lagabi, this, it really doesn't matter because as you're spinning, you're going to lose the moon as well. So the moon will set this Friday night. If we see the moon, it will set by 7 o'clock. You may see it from 6 to 7 o'clock. And for a reason what I'm saying, if conjunction here in Toronto is Thursday night, so it's 12 degrees by Friday night, the moon is 12 degrees east of the sun. So it is east. So let's say Shkia is 6 o'clock on Shabbos. The Shkia of the moon will be an hour later. You're still going to lose the visibility of the moon as you spin around because the moon is here and now you're facing night. You're facing the other direction. How could you see the moon if the moon is here? So you will see the moon always to the west, always to the west on a new month, only for an hour and a very small sliver. Every single Rosh Chodesh, it's the same story. Because just like the sun sets to the west wherever you are in the world, conjunction means the moon and the sun are aligned. After conjunction, you moved away a little bit, but it's right next to the sun. So it's going to set an hour later than the sun, always to the west, where it seems to you the sun is because it sets in the west. As the Chodesh goes on and we get to Zion, the moon moves here. The moon is here 90 degrees around the globe. You're going to see the moon 50%, which is really 90 degrees, because now it's going to shine on this 50%, the sun, and you have visibility from here. It's not going to be the full moon, which is really a half a moon. It's not going to be the full moon, but you have much more visibility from 6 o'clock until 12 o'clock. Why? Because 12 o'clock at night, you're losing it. The sun is going to set on Zion, but you have 3 hours, at least 6 hours of the moon from Shkia until you're turning around and you're on the opposite side of the world of the moon. How could you see the moon if you're on the opposite side? On the 15th day of the month, the moon is here. If the moon is here on the 15th day of the month, Rabbi say, you see the moon the entire night. This is Shkia. The sun is shining on the moon here. Shkia, 12 o'clock at night, then it spins, my menshi can't go under, until here is the morning. And over here, 6 in the morning, as you move to daybreak, you lose the moon, because it loses your visibility. But on Tes Vav B'Chodesh, the moon is out from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Again, Rabbi say, because the sun is shining on the full moon, so you get the entire moon, because there's nothing blocking it. It's not on the side of the earth where you are. It's right here opposite the sun. It's not shining in a tilt direction, which half of it won't be facing the earth. It's right here. So the entire night, when Toronto is evening, this menshi over here, which is Toronto, 6 o'clock Shkia could see the moon. It's going to appear to be moving, of course, because just like the sun moves by day, the moon moves by night, but he's going to see the moon for 12 hours. And that's why an eclipse could only happen on the 15th day. Because as the moon rotates, most of the time it's here or below and you could see it. But there are times that the earth is in the way between the sun and the moon. And as the earth moves, it's going to block for an hour or two or three or four until the moon, which moves extremely fast, and the sun and the earth, which is moving, they separate. That's the only time you could have an eclipse. It's all aligned by conjunction, and it's aligned on the 15th day. And that's why the 15th day is the last day of Kiddush Levana. It's the last day of Kiddush Levana because from here on in, the moon starts getting smaller. From here on in, the moon starts getting smaller. No, it gets smaller because now, when it's here, you see, the sun is shining on 50%, half the ball. As it moves here, the sun is shining also on 50%, but what you could see from Earth is much less. As it goes here, it's less. As it goes there, it's even much less. It turns into a sliver. So Rabbi Say, right? Rabbi Say, I hope is this clear?
Always shining on the 50% of the moon.
Always on half the ball. But the question,
That's where the ball is.
right, eclipse, which is only on the 15th. It always shines, but if it shines on here 50%, the earth could see this part, but you can't see this part, right? But here you could see everything, because when it shines here, you could see everything. Everybody say, now we understand why on a day like today or on Chanukah, you're not going to see a moon. Why? Where's the moon Chanukah? Conjunction, 25 days, somewhere here. That's where the moon is, getting close to the sun again. Somewhere there, Toronto, at 4 o'clock in the morning, now could see the moon. But at shiur, which is here, how could you see the moon? It's on the other side, going into daybreak. That's where the moon is, because the moon is getting close to the sun, and you just started the night. So you're on the dark side of the earth, and the moon, the 25th day of the month, the 26th day of the month, the 27th day of the month, this morning, the moon is very close to the sun, but you're night. How is it possible for you to see the moon? You just started facing this way, and the moon is there. Very good. He was lighting the first candle. Very good. Very good. So Rabbi say, if you look tomorrow morning, you may see a very small moon. Very small, but you'll see it. You'll see the small moon because the moon is here. You won't see it now at night. And you won't see it at 12 o'clock. You won't see it at 2 o'clock. You'll see it when this menshi gets here at 4 o'clock because the moon is right here. And again, you'll see a small sliver because the sliver, the only part that's pacing you is the sun is shining on it, but you have to have visibility. Rabbi say, what the moon setting and rising means you lose visibility. That's what it means. You moved out of range. You had shkia, you lost it. So the beginning of the month, it's traveling east next to the sun. It's going to set the first night an hour after the sun. The second night, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. When you reach the middle of the month, the moon is there for 12 hours because that's your range of visibility. 6 o'clock, you look this way, you'll see it. And that's why the beginning of the month, the moon is always on the west side of the sky. You walk out Agudah to be Mekadosh Levana, you don't have to go like this. There's no chance that the moon's going to be facing Young Street. The moon's going to be over Terrace Gardens. In the summer, the moon is going to be a little bit further north, but always towards Kiel, always towards Dufferin. Now, in the winter, it's going to be Dufferin and Eglinton. But that's where the moon's going to be. If you look in middle of the month, the way we see it, the moon is going around, it's making its revolution. This morning, if you saw the moon, you know where it is, towards Young. Because it's moving toward, the moon is moving towards the sun, but that's going back to the full rotation, and that's where you're going to see it. And that's why you're going to see it very close to the morning hours, but it's going to be on the eastern side of the sky. So again, every Rosh Chodesh, every Beis or Gimel or Daled that we have, the moon is going to be out for a short amount of time. It gets longer and longer every night because, think about it, if the sun were to move, Shkia would get 7 and 8 o'clock. So instead of the sun, the moon is moving. The moon has light from the sun, so Shkia for the moon is 8 o'clock. It moves here, Shkia is 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, and the moon keeps on setting. With this, Rabbi Say, we can understand such a difficult Rashi that Rav Henkin explains. And I'm going to just explain it, and with this we're going to conclude. Rav Henkin says like this. Rashi says, and just let me attach these mentions, Rabbi Say. That these Rashi says like this. Rashi says that the Gemara in Daf Chof, that for 6 hours of the new moon, and the new moon means, like my wife's, the beginning of the Chodesh. There's no new or old moon. Old moon means the end of the month. New moon is the beginning of the month. So Rashi says in this cryptic Gemara in Daf Chof, Rashi says the Bnei Eretz Yisroel will see the new moon 6 hours after the MOILAD. The Bnei BAVEL will see the end of the month 6 hours before conjunction. And all the Rishonim asked, how does that make sense? Iraq and Eretz Yisroel is like Toronto and New York. 35-minute difference in Shkia. Bavel is east, like New York is east from Toronto. How is it possible that you could see it this way and that way, and all the Gedolim on Rashi, they don't begin to understand? And the Hebrew Art School did a great job bringing down from Rav Henkin, Zeichat Tzadok Levrach. And he says, this is the Pshat in Rashi. And he says like this. This is Eretz Yisroel, and this is Bavel, Iraq. Close by, about 500 kilometers east. A little bit similar to New York and Toronto, Montreal and Toronto. Shkia in Toronto in April is a half hour later than Montreal. Shkia in Eretz Yisroel is a half hour later than Iraq, because Iraq is further east, right? That's clear. Right? Everyone, that we understand that 400 or 500 kilometers gives you about a half hour of Shkia, and then the clock changes. Of course, Detroit. But much that's a whole different. So Rabbi says, so if you have like this, if this is conjunction and it happened in Eretz Yisroel, Kodim Chatzos at 5 to 12. 5 to 12. Shkia is 6 o'clock. So 6 hours later, the moon will move 3 degrees east. What Rashi means is like this. Even though they're so close, but in Eretz Yisroel, they will get the new moon. Why? Because at 5 to 6 or 6, when it's Shkia, the moon moved enough away that Eretz Yisroel could get a glimpse. But Bavel is 35 minutes ahead. Their Shkia was 35 minutes ago. They turned, at that point, the moon was not 3 degrees away from the sun. It was less. And you cannot see it before 6 hours after conjunction. 6 hours. So 6 hours after conjunction, Bavel already turned away. When Bavel was here for Shkia, it was only 5 hours and 25 minutes away. It was only 2 degrees away. 2 degrees you can't see. No one says you could see less than 6 hours. So even though they're in such close proximity, the new moon will be seen by Bnei Eretz Yisroel, but Bnei Bavel is too late. They're facing the other side already. They missed it. By the time it pulled away 3 degrees, they are already at 6:35, so to speak, 35 minutes. I'm getting to you in 1 minute. Tommy, 1 minute. We'll get to that and we're going to end with that. Whereas in the morning, Reb Henkin says, it's just the opposite. The end of the month As the moon is getting close to the sun, when it reaches the 6 hours, the BAVEL that's east is going to get that last glimpse. But then it moved. By the time ERETZ YISROEL gets to the viewpoint, it's already within the 6 hours. It's too close to the sun for them to see it. No one disputes that you cannot see the moon for a 12-hour period. 6 hours as it gets close to the sun, and 6 hours as it gets away from the sun. Based, what? Does no good at the end. It doesn't good. But the Gemara is teaching us, like RASHI, this calculation. Why? If an aide would say that he saw the moon within 6 hours of the MOILAD, Eidei Sheker, the Gemara says, and the Chachomim knew the MOILAD. So they were able to disprove the Eidim and say, you made a mistake. That wasn't the moon. It's Eidei Sheker, because they know it's impossible to see it within 6 hours before or 6 hours after conjunction. Based on this, Rabbi saying, that's how Henkin explains Rashi. It's very beautiful and accurate. Based on this, well, Tommy just said, Shlomo Miller says like this, Makas B'chayris in Mitzrayim happened Chatzos Halayla. Everyone died the same second? Shlomo proves that not. And he says, Mitzrayim could have been a city that's wide 50, 60 miles, whatever the land of Mitzrayim is. As Mitzrayim is turning, even in 60 miles, Chatzos in the eastern part of Mitzrayim is 12:01. Boom. As it moved to the next block, 3 seconds later hits Chatzos. The next block, it's 12:02. The next block, so they were dying for a half hour. The Vayitzaku, the whole Mitzrayim was screaming. It didn't happen in 1 second. One house that happened at 12 o'clock in 3 seconds. The next house that happened 5. Yeah, he's saying that didn't happen at one time. He's explaining why. Yeah, he's saying even the Chatzos Rashi brings down, he didn't want them to have a time. Well, Tommy, one shot is he didn't want it's the Nigi to say they have a different Chatzos, so he said that to cover all fronts. But if he says they're Rabbi side, but the logic is impeccable. Because as the world turns, the Chatzos here is different than the Chatzos in Thornhill. And the Chatzos here is different than, Thornhill is not a good example, but it's different than the Chatzos on Bayview, or it's different than the Chatzos on the 427. Why? Even though it's only a 5-10 minute drive, he'll be different by 8-9 seconds. Rabbi say, this is how Reb Henkin explains Rashi. And Rashi says, what's the purpose of knowing the MOILAD and the Mekadosh Al Piriya? They used it to determine if they're Eidei Sheker, because they knew when it was possible to see the moon. The MOILAD. It's off by a little bit. There's one guy who does it, it's off by a little bit. Actually, the guy who does this manim does his man for Thornhill and his man for here. You could get, right, you do have. Right, but here in the city where they're from, you didn't leave, it's not off by more than 20 seconds, right? It's right. A little bit different, right? They have different ones, right? The Catskills have a different one. Rabbi say, so we're just going to end with this, and that is that the scientists today say they have difficulty certain spottings really to see it before 10 hours or 12 hours. Dr. Astra from the Koil says it hasn't been seen in a long time within 10 hours of conjunction. And there's a machlokes in Rishonim how, but the concept remains the same. For the period during conjunction, it's impossible to see. As the moon goes, we see more and more and more of it until we see the entire moon. As it wanes towards the end of the month, you'll see it at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and so on. And with this, I'm going to end. It's not for now, but the Baal Amor learns this Gemara is the Makor for the international dateline. It's not for now, Rabbi Sai. But where Rashi explained it this way, like Reb Henkin, he learns it entirely different. International dateline. Thank you all for joining. I think I went overtime by 10 minutes. And
Everybody else on mute. Anyone on Zoom can unmute and give a short from Daniel. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
If they knew anything, If they knew when the MOILAD is, why did they bother with the Eidei Riyah?
Mitzvah Kaddish al pi Riyah. And you even the Gemara holds you Mechal Shabbos to Kaddish al pi Riyah.
Right.
But when times came that it was already impossible, number one, there was no central Beis Din. Number two, Klal Yisrael was so dispersed, and they had no way of telling people when is Pesach and when is Sukkot. So Hillel HaKoten was Mesakin. From now on, we're going to be Mekadesh al pi Moilad, which works min HaTorah. It's the same Rosh Chodesh, same Pesach, Mekadesh Yisroel v'Hazmanim. There are two ways to do it, but the Lechatchila is al pi Eidim.
Shkoyach.
Thank you all. Thank you all for
The
joining.
next METZULOS HADAF shiur is first night of Chanukah is Tuesday. We're going to do it while the moon is smallest, right before Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is going to be Shabbos Sunday, right? Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos Sunday. So that Tuesday. METZULOS HADAF.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you for joining.
Daniel, what
Thank
did
you.
you say? Could you just repeat what you said, that you see more of the moon at the beginning of the Chodesh or at the end? What did you say about that?
No, the most of the moon you see on 15 because the sun is shining exactly.
I understand that. So that means at the beginning of the Chodesh, towards the middle of the Chodesh, you see there's less moon.
More moon and more time. The middle of the Chodesh is more moon and more time. And here's why. I don't know if you can see this, but if this is Shkia, this is the sun, and this is Shkia, you could start seeing the moon because you're facing the same direction. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, you could still see the moon. And as the world turns, you could still see the moon as it rotates until 6 o'clock in the morning. So the 15th of the month, or the 14th and the 16th, you could see the moon the entire night.
So
But the rest of
from the MOILAD till the middle of the month, you get to see more and more of the moon.
exactly. As each day you see more and more and for longer time. As it moves further away from the sun, the moon moves 12 degrees a day. So you get to see it longer because it sets later, because it's closer to you. Remember, setting of the moon or the sun means you're turning away from it.
Right.
So if it moves here, you turn away from this later. And your reflection keeps on getting greater and greater. As it moves here, much more is visible towards Earth. And it moves
So you said at the beginning of the month you see the moon, and at the end of the month you don't see the moon.
The end of the month you see it before morning, before Shachris. If you look this morning, you'll see a beautiful moon at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's because the moon went around the world. It's almost Rosh Chodesh, and it's very close to the sun again. But it's in the point of the world where when you turn, you'll only see it early in the morning because you have to be here. You have to be here to see it because the moon is here. Remember, here was Shkia, and this is Netzachama. So when you're here before Netz, you could see a reflection. So if you look tomorrow morning, maybe, on your way to Shachris, on the east side towards Young, you'll see a small moon.
In the kitchen. Looking for more. I found this in the kitchen.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Go ahead, Danny.
Scientists say.